children, but can they also benefit youth in terms of their economic development, in terms of their personal growth, as well as their professional development? So without further ado, I will hand over to our first panelist who joins us virtually, Dr. Frances Beaton-Day from the World Bank.
Before turning to the potential of youth-led ECCD programs specifically, I wanted to start with a broader framing on the impact overall of childcare and early learning services, and also the current gaps in provision globally. And my colleague Amanda Jebcheli and I recently launched a report which highlighted the need to look at childcare and early learning services, the impact of these services, more holistically, and recognise that access to quality services has the potential to build human capital and to increase equity through positive impacts for children, but also for women, for families, businesses and economies. So this includes, of course, child development outcomes such as improved school readiness, better lifelong learning, and improved employment prospects. But it can also have really positive impacts on women's economic empowerment in terms of allowing women to have higher workforce participation, improve productivity, increase their income, and even potentially increase the quality of work. There are broader impacts for families, including those for older siblings who may be taking on a portion of the childcare burden. And when they're relieved of such a burden, then have the opportunity to participate more in school. And there are benefits for broader business productivity and economic growth. And expanding access to these services also can create significant job opportunities. And as we present here, including youth being an important part of that. Benefits, there are significant gaps in access right now. So in our recent paper, we estimate that 43% of children below primary school entry age need childcare and early learning services and do not have access. This is 349 million children, the vast majority of which live in low and lower middle income countries. And closing this huge gap has potential to be an important source of job creation in its own right, as I mentioned. And we estimate that 43 million new jobs could be created through filling this gap. New funding will undoubtedly be needed to achieve this. However, especially given the current resource constraints that many governments are facing, it's really important to consider opportunities to leverage financing within existing programs, and as Aisha said, to kind of be smart and efficient with how we're thinking about these programming. And using skills training and employment programs targeted at youth or vulnerable women to build the ECD workforce is one such kind of win-win approach that we think can achieve multiple objectives. So the graphs on this slide highlight government demand for ECD programs and also government demand for skills training and employment programs within World Bank operations. And you can see that demand for both areas has increased rapidly over recent years. And for ECD, this is based on kind of growing global recognition from governments of the benefits of these programs. For skills programs, this is driven by trends such as employment challenges around urbanization, the youth bulge, and having more educated youth that need employment opportunities. And we found that combining ECD and skills training and employment programs really has the potential to increase employment for vulnerable groups, to improve empowerment and economic outcomes for them, and also to build the workforce to deliver quality services with a single investment. This is something that we've been piloting for several years in Liberia. So in 2015, there was an opportunity identified to integrate childcare and early learning training into an existing skills employment and empowerment program, which was targeting vulnerable adolescent girls and young women. And we basically saw that there were opportunities to target these three important issues. So we wanted to increase empowerment, and the ECD track really offers strong market demand in Liberia and meaningful career pathways as well. We wanted to increase self-esteem and empowerment of the participants, which was an overall objective of the program, and increase the workforce, of course, to deliver quality childcare and preschool services. What we did was to integrate this childcare and early learning training track, building on the existing format of other training tracks. So it was a 3-month classroom training, followed by a 3-month job placement. And it was delivered at a similar cost to the other vocational training tracks. And then we made some tweaks to make sure that it was aligning with the Ministry of Education ECD practitioner framework. And so far we've completed 3 rounds and seen really strong results. And we're now looking for opportunities to scale up, as well as pilot an additional professional development opportunity to support graduates to establish their own childcare preschool services. And I briefly wanted just to highlight some of the results that we've seen in Liberia. So we've had high rates of completion in every round with this particular track, substantial increases in employment, and really strong increases in ECD-specific employment. So in the last 2 rounds especially, around 90% of those that were employed have gone into ECD employment. We've seen significant increases in income, and in every round, graduates have also increased, have reported increased confidence and other aspects around kind of self-reliance financially. And we're in the middle of assessing the impact on classroom practice and child development, and I hope in a few weeks' time, actually, the results are literally coming in at the moment, and we'll be able to share some information around that. And we think there's really high potential to implement similar approaches across other countries. So we have had huge demand from other teams across the bank to tell more about this particular approach and to provide kind of technical assistance to help teams develop. In India, we're already working with the Skills Project to develop and pilot 4 ECD qualifications. And I just wanted to end with a few considerations for designing and implementing these types of programs. So based on kind of our experiences, but also some research from other programs, we think there are kind of maybe 7 things that we particularly want to highlight. So firstly, it's really important to diagnose the existing market demand for ECD services and ensure there is sufficient demand, appropriate employment qualifications, and meaningful career pathways. And that might not be the case in every context. Certainly in some contexts, the Ministry of Education runs all training programs and doesn't want to rely on any other accredited training providers. So this won't be an approach that works in every context, but it does seem to have huge potential in a number of countries. Align with government frameworks for certified ECD practitioners to be able to maximise graduates' employment potential and make sure that there's harmonisation within countries. In designing the curriculum, include a focus on both ECD as well as broader workplace competencies in alignment with recognised kind of good practices for skills training programmes. Where possible, include a structured and relevant internship, which gives a crucial opportunity for practice, but can also be a really important pathway into employment. And many of the graduates in Liberia ended up being employed with the employer they did their internship with. Identify and mitigate any challenges that trainees are likely to face while completing the programme. So again, in Liberia, we use several strategies to encourage participation, including free on-site childcare, intensive community engagement, part-time training structure, etc. Support graduates in finding employment, and this could include entrepreneurial opportunities, which is something we're exploring now, and of course build mechanisms to scale and sustain the programme. So I'd like to stop there, but thank you all very much for listening. I'm looking forward to hearing the other presentations and engaging in the discussion shortly. Thanks so much, Aisha. Back to you.
From here, I'd like to hand over to my colleagues Simon Siao and Emily Franchett to discuss the case study from Pakistan.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us. We are so pleased to present our team's work here, which is LEAPS program. And LEAPS stands for Youth Leaders for Early Childhood, Assuring Children Are Prepared for School. It is a youth-led ECCE program, which we have recently evaluated in rural Pakistan. So LEAPS was developed as response to 3 major challenges in Pakistan, including lack of quality ECCE service for young children, lack of training and employment opportunities for female youth, and gender disparities among youth for labor force and education opportunities. Closing these gaps is key to achieve the Sustainable Development Agenda in Pakistan, specifically for goal 4, 8, and 5, for quality education, decent work and economic growth, and gender equality. LEAPS was implemented in partnership with Government of Pakistan's National Human Development or NCHD. The program begins by recruiting and training female youth as community youth leaders or CYLs. CYLs are aged between 18 to 24 years with minimum 10th grade education. CYLs received an initial 2-week vocational training program followed by monthly on-job session. After the training, NCHD and CYLs worked with communities to establish LEAPS classroom within CYL's own village in community-donated space. CYLs then provide quality ECE service to young children in their own village. And finally, CYLs coordinate with primary school teacher to ensure smooth and successful transition of these LEAPS students in primary school. After a successful pilot of LEAPS program in 2015 and 16, the team implemented Scale Up, expanding LEAPS through NCHD platform, reaching 99 villages across 4 districts of Sindh province during 2018 and 2021. This map is showing distribution of targeted villages across 4 districts. The first aim of the evaluation was to examine the impact of large-scale implementation over children and youth development, and the second aim was to evaluate the fidelity, quality, and the cost of large-scale implementation within NCHD system. I will now hand over to Emily, who will share us more about evaluation and program impact.
Can everyone hear me? Great. So the LEAPS program was evaluated using a cluster randomized stepwise design, which allowed for a phased rollout of the program as seen in the diagram on the slide. In this case, the 99 villages that were targeted for LEAPS expansion were randomized to one of 3 groups, such that there were 33 villages or clusters in each group. Each of the 3 groups was then assigned to roll out the program at one of 3 set time points or steps. Within this evaluation design, there were 4 rounds of data collected to assess program impact, and that is seen in the diagram here through those blue triangles showing our first round of data collection at baseline, followed by another round after each phase of program rollout. We evaluated LEAP's impact on learning and development outcomes for both young children and female youth. In terms of impact on child outcomes, we assessed their school readiness skills as well as their executive functioning skills. And this includes inhibitory control, cognitive flexibility, and working memory. So taken together, all of these skills represent markers of a child's readiness for school, which includes skills such as listening, cooperation, problem solving, and social skills like making friends, all of which are crucial to a child's lifelong learning. In terms of youth outcomes, we evaluated different components of their personal growth and professional growth, as well as their executive functioning skills and mental health. This table summarizes the results of the evaluation of LEAP's impact on child outcomes, and you can see that the outcomes for which we found statistically significant impacts are highlighted in the green boxes, indicating that impacts range from small to medium effects. So despite implementation during the COVID-19 pandemic, we were pleased to find that LEAPs led to significantly higher scores for school readiness for children as compared to those children in communities that did not have a LEAPS preschool. We also found that LEAPS benefited children's cognitive flexibility skills as well. This slide provides a snapshot of the benefits to youth development based on an analysis of interviews with CYLs and their families. And so we found that the youth and their families perceived benefits to a range of different personal and professional development components, as well as their economic empowerment. So in summary, we found that LEAPS was successful in boosting children's skills for school readiness. Given the fact that in Pakistan, only 19% of children are enrolled in early childhood care and education, we believe that LEAPS offers a potential solution to addressing workforce gaps and service gaps in ECCE. We also found that given the promising results for benefits to youth development, LEAPS potentially offers a solution to expanding opportunities for training and employment for female youth in order to combat the pervasive gender inequities in terms of education and employment. So with that, we'd just like to thank the many contributors to this work, given that this represents the efforts of a much wider group than who we have on stage here. So a special thanks in particular to our government collaborators at the NCHD, as well as all of the communities and families who made LEAPS possible. In addition, we'd like to thank our funders at Dubai Cares and Grand Challenges Canada. So thank you very much. Back to you, Aisha.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to hand over to our co-panelist, Dr. Angelica Ponguta, who will be sharing her case study on Project Juntos in Colombia.
I am delighted to be here today to share with you the process and early findings of an adaptation of LEAPS Pakistan and the co-construction of an intergenerational program for child and youth development, which we have called Juntos Colombia. So our journey begins in 2018 when, inspired by LEAPS, we sought to adapt and implement the Pakistani model that you have just heard about in Colombia. And in order to summarize this exciting and yet complex 3-year journey and the lessons we have learned thus far, I will use the metaphor of a growing tree, with the tree being a representation of the program Juntos. And I will also guide our conversation by addressing 4 key questions. First, we're going to reflect on what are the key elements that have provided a fertile ground or an enabling environment for LEAPS to grow in Colombia. We're then going to explore what are the emergent roots that anchor Juntos in Colombia. We will then move on to what are the core supporting elements that have helped sustain and in the future take Juntos to scale in Colombia. And then finally, we're going to reflect on what are some of the fruits or results that we have harvested thus far and that we hope to harvest in the future as we continue to implement Juntos in Colombia. So with regard to the elements that have provided a fertile ground or an enabling environment for the seed of LEAPS Pakistan to sprout in Colombia, I would like to highlight 5. First, Colombia does have a strong child and youth development and education policy landscape that we believe provides a viable normative framework to explore innovative intergenerational programs. Secondly, the project was planted in an environment that was highly interdisciplinary, that was highly also interinstitutional, and that involved also multiple sectors from the outset. Finally, we came to this process hand in hand with a team of international partners that have contributed greatly to the process along the way. Now, in terms of our second question of what are the emergent roots, we hypothesized that having anchored Juntos in Colombia, particularly in 3 factors, is key. First, we have a programmatic design that is rooted in a theory of change and principles of implementation science, which I'm going to elaborate on later on. We also have the presence of committed local champions. And finally, and perhaps most critically, we have an intentional forging of a partnership that is based in trust and in a shared sense of purpose among all local and international actors. Now, with regard to our third question, it is our intention to build a program that is sustainable and scalable over time. And we believe that there are 2 key factors that will allow us to reach this goal. 1, this is a model that is evidence-based, and 2, it is a model that is co-constructed. I will quickly elaborate on these 2 core principles next. So first, Juntos Colombia builds upon the evidence that was generated in Pakistan and that we just learned about, as well as a theory of change-driven evaluation, also principles of dynamic systems that take into account the child and the young person, as well as the community and the country contexts within which they live. And finally, the application of a social innovation action framework to evaluate the program's implementation throughout. Secondly, Juntos Colombia is at its core co-constructed, and these images here show our youth mentors and who are actively contributing to the co-construction of the program. We also have civil society networks that are getting currently activated in the territories where we're aiming to go. And then we have also the national and international teams that work consistently on the evaluation of the program, as well as the young scholars from the academic network, who are the new generation of scholars and practitioners in child and youth development. Now, finally with you, I will share some of the early fruits or results that we have harvested in this journey so far by our academic network, civil society, government, and our community partners. So our academic partners have capitalized on Juntos to realize their own research and practice agendas. So for example, and specifically, faculty and students from Del Valle University aim to strengthen pedagogical practices, again, by capitalizing on Juntos. We have faculty and students from the Javeriana University who aim to elevate motivation and leveraging community voices, again, through the opportunity that Juntos affords through the field work as well as in the research agenda. We have faculty and students from the Santiago de Cali University that aim to promote effective systems for education, again, by capitalizing on Juntos Colombia. And also we have faculty and students from San Buenaventura University who aim to leverage the histories, stories, and context through our joint work. Now, of course, cross-cuttingly, the aim of all research partners is to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the design, implementation, and eventual evaluation of Juntos. Now, civil society members, particularly represented by Aldeas SOS Colombia, have capitalized on Juntos to realize their own institutional mission of promoting child rights and parental practices, while government partners from the Regional Secretariat of Education of Del Valle del Cauca aim to, through this initiative, realize the policy mandates of promoting holistic child and youth development. Finally, community members that are currently represented by Juntos mentors capitalize on Juntos to promote opportunities and innovation, as well as demonstrate and leverage their commitment to their own communities. So in conclusion, our invitation to you is to join our journey as we continue to grow Juntos together, to harvest results next among children, youth, families, and communities in Colombia and beyond. I end with a heartfelt acknowledgement to all of our partners and our funders, in particular, the Jacobs Foundation and the Yale Institute for Global Health, who have provided resources to promote this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd now like to turn to Dr. Randy Wolf, who will be sharing her video about their case study in North America, specifically in California.
Good morning. I'm Randy Wolf, Executive Director of Early Care and Education Pathways to Success, or ECCEPS. We're best known for our trailblazing work with early care and education apprenticeships in California. At the core of our mission is a commitment to advance the rigorous professional development and economic well-being of the ECE workforce. ECCEPS believes apprenticeship is particularly well suited to ECE workforce development because we know that teacher quality is the essential component in successful early education, and developing workers' skills, knowledge, and competencies is the essential focus of apprenticeship. So high-quality apprenticeship leads to high-quality teaching. Through ECCEPS apprenticeships, participants complete at least 2,000 hours of on-the-job training, earn no-cost college degrees and teaching credentials, receive steadily increasing wages, and are employed throughout the program. Since 2015, we have engaged more than 500 workers. Currently, we have more than 175 active participants. ECCEPS has developed registered apprenticeships for center-based ECE teachers, home-based family child care providers, home visitors, and high school youth. As an apprenticeship sponsor and sector intermediary, ECCEPS provides technical assistance to 20 apprenticeship partnerships around the state, and that means supporting initial program design, development, implementation, and planning for long-term program sustainability. So now let's turn to youth apprenticeship. Research has demonstrated that pathways braiding employment and education provide significant benefits to both students and employers. In the United States, the Partnership to Advance Youth Apprenticeship has developed these guiding principles for high-quality youth apprenticeship. Programs must be career-oriented, equitable, portable, adaptable, and accountable. Youth apprenticeship programs rely on a partnership between employers, high schools, colleges, and an apprenticeship intermediary like ECCEPS. And of course, weaving the voice of young people into the collaboration is essential. The first ECCEPS Youth Apprenticeship began in 2018. Currently, we have 55 youth apprentices who are training to become center-based early childhood teachers. We believe in the potential of ECE Youth Apprenticeship for two reasons. First, it's critical that we address the crisis-level teacher shortage made more pressing because so many ECE workers are over age 50 and will leave the field over the next 10 to 15 years. Second, we need accessible career pathways for young people who want to work with children. Many youth apprenticeships focus on industries with fairly high earning potential and fairly low training requirements and fields that are largely male-dominated. But what about young people who want to make a difference, who want to teach, who want to work with families and communities, for whom earning potential is not necessarily the primary motivation? Our society needs to prioritize those young people, and they need to be well-trained and ready for the challenges ahead. And those are the young people that ECCEPS is interested in. The ECCEPS Youth Apprenticeship model starts with 2 years in high school and continues with 2 years of community college. Students complete their associate degree and 2,000 hours of paid on-the-job training over the course of 4 years, graduating with the credential needed to work as teachers in early childhood programs. This chart provides an overview of the research-based supports provided in the ECCEPS model. But the secret sauce to the success of the model is a fierce commitment to equity that impacts how we choose the communities in which we work, how we support the apprentices, acknowledging both their strengths and their challenges, and our no-fail policy that sets a high bar of expectation for project partners, requiring a determination to prioritize equity, diversity, and inclusion in program planning and implementation so that every young person successfully completes their program. The biggest barrier to realizing the full potential of youth apprenticeship is that the high school system isn't truly set up for such programs. Youth apprenticeship requires systemic flexibility so that young people can attend school part-time, work in the field part-time, and graduate from high school having gained the knowledge, skills, and experience to enter the field as highly competent workers, even as they go on to pursue college degrees and advanced training. Until the high school system is fully aligned with the requirements of an apprenticeship experience, we may be offering useful earn and learn programs, but they are not synonymous with, nor do they provide the strengths and advantages of, a state-of-the-art apprenticeship program. All of us here understand that this work is difficult, that the barriers to success are significant, and that we are pioneers in the truest sense. So let me leave you with this quote: "Challenges are what make life interesting. Overcoming them is what makes life meaningful." I hope these words will be useful to you in the challenging times ahead. Please feel free to contact me if you would like more information, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. I'd now like to go to Vidya Pucha from Results for Development. Vidya will discuss the implications that we've seen in terms of addressing the major substantial gaps we have in delivering on an early childhood workforce.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to share some reflections on youth-led early childhood programs from the lens of ECWI, the Early Childhood Workforce Initiative, which is a partnership of the Regional Early Childhood Networks and R4D. First, let me just give a little bit of context on this initiative. It's a global multi-sectoral effort with a few key aims to generate new knowledge that can serve as a foundation for additional tools and resources for policymakers and practitioners, to create opportunities for cross-country learning, to support country capacity building, and to advocate for sustained attention to addressing workforce issues at country, regional, and global levels. And just want to pause for a second to help illustrate in more detail who we consider this workforce. And you'll see on this slide that there are several examples of what these workforce roles are. And as you can see, the workforce, like the early childhood field at large, is quite diverse. There are people that are coming across sectors that play different roles, are full-time, part-time volunteers, and have a variety of previous training and experience. And there are those who work directly with children and families, and also those who provide training, supervision, and support. Across our work under this initiative, we have identified 4 core elements that are interrelated parts of workforce development. And we recently completed a series of landscape studies on each of these topics. These landscape studies identify key trends, challenges, and approaches across sectors and roles in each of the themes here. These themes are competencies and standards, training and professional development, working conditions, continuous development. And I'd like to share a little bit today from some of these findings. Some of them are relevant to the discussion and in terms of providing context on why some of these youth-led ECD programs emerged and are an important approach to consider in strengthening and supporting the workforce. And others share ideas that we can continue to support these youth in their roles as best as possible. First, one of the themes that's emerged from our work is that early childhood personnel face low pay and unstable terms of employment. This is unsurprising given a lot of the discussion so far today, and provides an interesting backdrop for understanding the workforce at large that's delivering early childhood programs and why youth-led programs are important and have emerged. Highlighting this further, early childhood personnel face low levels of remuneration. For example, in the education sector, teacher salaries at the pre-primary level are generally not equivalent to those of teachers working at the primary level. In the health field, many community health worker programs utilize volunteers and provide little to no remuneration other than per diem payments or other in-kind benefits. And in general, many workers are not permanent employees and are seeking better employment opportunities. And building on this, we've also seen across programs that when the workforce faces these challenges in pay and status, it creates challenges overall in recruiting and retaining a qualified and diverse pool of candidates. Although many requirements in place, they struggle to recruit workers who meet these qualifications. The profession, in many ways, and in several contexts and roles, occupies status, which can dissuade entry. Alternate entry points have been used to attract workers to the field, and we can see that many of these programs today are falling into this category. And another example might offer from other countries include similar programs that utilize models of training in place, allowing participants to undergo training while working and earning a salary, and apprenticeship models that allow participants to complete fewer classroom hours than traditional training programs and receive on-the-job coaching by experienced educators. Now shifting gears a little bit, I wanted to dive into some of the research and findings that we have identified about what additional support is important for the workforce to improve their job satisfaction and the quality of their work. And this is very relevant to youth-led programs too. And one of the biggest components of this support is in-service training. But what makes good in-service training? In-service training and professional development opportunities are most effective when they are practical, ongoing, and incorporate peer learning. Ongoing support is particularly important for paraprofessionals who may have limited education and initial preparation. And lastly, what else can be done to support this segment of the workforce in particular? We've seen at the systems level that a lack of clearly defined roles and competencies for early childhood personnel weakens the effectiveness of training and limits opportunities for career advancement. This ultimately influences the knowledge and skills that workers have to facilitate quality programs, but also has implications for their overall job satisfaction and career progression. Clarifying what these competencies are and using them as a basis for training, ongoing support, and career pathways can help ensure the right level of support and at the same time improved retention. And lastly, based on these findings, wanted to share some recommendations about the importance of increasing the quality and availability of training and ongoing support, aligning competencies with training, linking professional development to career pathways, and strengthening the quality of workforce quality assurance systems. Lastly, being able to learn from different roles, sectors, and geographies can help with all of the above. Thanks very much. I'll wrap up there and hand back over to Aisha.
We'd like to just explore some of these topics further with the panel. And I'd like to begin by perhaps turning to Fran with our question around what do you consider from the experiences of the World Bank to be some of the essential ingredients for a successful youth training program to deliver on early childhood care and education services?
Thanks, Aisha. And it's great to hear all the experiences from around the world here. So I think for us, some of the key ingredients were making sure that it's a relevant, well-structured, and fully supported program. So we particularly found the vulnerable adolescent girls and young women. I think the same with Minnie Ruth, that the community engagement was really crucial, and really bringing on board their families and partners and enabling them to participate. There are a number of other strategies around participation as well that were crucial to this, including counselling to support their mental well-being. Many of these women had gone through traumatic experiences, and that was a really important part of building their confidence and addressing some of their underlying challenges that they were facing. So I think certainly making sure that you've got really strong support systems in place and strategies for participation, and obviously ensuring that the ECD curriculum, the training curriculum, is relevant, highly practical. So we achieve this through both a strong training curriculum, but also through the internship, where they were able then to put that into practice, as well as having a very hands-on training in the first part. And I think the one thing that, when we've been looking at this in other countries, really making sure that the training is aligning with what is needed in the country. If there are training practitioner frameworks already in place, then aligning with those to make sure that you are maximizing the employment potential at the end of the training, that you're aligned with the broader frameworks in the country. And we found that in places where that isn't possible, and in Liberia in the first round it wasn't possible, the pathways that are open for the graduates are reduced, and you get a lack of coherence in the country, and it can lead to inconsistency in quality as well. So this can be a good opportunity through these programs to work with the government to put those frameworks in place, but certainly aligning or helping to strengthen those frameworks along the way is really important. Let me stop there. I could go on, but I know we're tight for time.
And ask Angie. In day one of this conference, we learned a lot about the importance of not just having youth in the room, but actively engaging, actively listening, and co-creating programs. So I'd just like for you to share some of the key lessons that you've learned from Colombia about how to really achieve this co-creation of programs with youth. Angie, we can't actually hear you.
Is that better?
We've lost you again. Sorry.
Oh, you have lost me again?
No, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. Yes, so this is actually a good example of both the challenges and the opportunities of trying to co-construction also in the middle of a pandemic, which is something to consider for us, right? So we believe that, again, one of the key elements that's going to lead to sustainability and impact is participation and being creative and being open-minded in the way in which we engage with the community. So for us, and I think building on what Fran said, I think there are multiple inputs. One is guiding the participation through what the system, what the policy, and what the culture dictates. But also secondly, being very open to what that culture and context, those nuances mean for the young person. And so in that regard, we are guided by, of course, the policy, but also those mentors that can really guide us through the dialogue and can elevate the playing field for the youth and all of the partners that are aiming to work together. I think our plan is to bring to the youth a model that has already been co-constructed to an extent with the multiple academic partners that I mentioned, with the mentors themselves, and they go through a similar process in this cascade where we present these ideas but have a framework in place that is open to being adapted and adjusted to how all of these kind of proposed components, both for the youth as well as for the young children, align with the ideologies and align with the priorities of the youth that we work with. And I think that's where the challenge is how do you sort of do both at the same time? Stay very faithful to curricular guidelines, to policy visions, but also be able to integrate and thread kind of the very nuanced, very cultural, very contextual kind of visions of young people in their communities. And so I'm hoping that in the next Rewired, we'll be able to tell you how that model of co-construction worked, but we have thus far developed the instruments both from a curricular as well as from a policy alignment perspective that we're really excited to test out.
Are running out of time, so I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all the panelists, but please, if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to all of us over email and we'd be happy to explore this further. Thank you.